My mom kicked me out when I found her new boyfriend living in my dad's house. Karma hit her hard when she discovered who actually owns it. When I came home from college, I found a complete stranger making coffee in our kitchen like he owned the place. When I first pulled in, I noticed an unfamiliar car parked where Dad used to park his truck. 6 months ago, I lost my dad Richard to a sudden heart attack. It hit our family hard, especially since he was always the picture of health, went to the gym 4 times a week, ate well, never smoked. He was my rock. I figured maybe Mom had a friend over to help with holiday preparations, but when I walked in, there was this guy in basketball shorts and a tank top, drinking from Dad's favorite coffee mug, the one with stupid dad jokes printed on it that I'd given him for Father's Day 3 years ago. He looked comfortable, like he belonged there, which made my stomach turn. My mom came downstairs wearing a silk robe I'd never seen before. She casually introduced the stranger as Alan, her boyfriend who had moved in 2 weeks ago. Just like that, as if she was telling me we got a new coffee maker or something. I stood there frozen, my college duffel bag still on my shoulder, unable to process what was happening. I asked Mom how she could move someone into our home so soon after Dad's death, and you'll never believe what she told me. She got defensive immediately on this, saying she deserved happiness, and that young people like me couldn't understand adult relationships. When I pointed out how disrespectful this was to Dad's memory, especially using his things, she completely lost it. She started screaming about how I was a pathetic mistake who was trying to control her life, and that I should be grateful she even let me come home for breaks. The thing is, looking back, this behavior wasn't totally surprising. My mom has a history of inappropriate conduct that Dad somehow tolerated. When I was in high school, she would flirt with my boyfriends whenever they came over. It started subtly, excessive compliments, finding excuses to touch their arms while talking, or wearing revealing clothes when they visited. Once, when my first serious boyfriend came to pick me up for junior prom, she answered the door in a low-cut top and tiny shorts, then insisted on taking pictures where she posed right next to him. It got so uncomfortable that I stopped bringing anyone home by senior year. Throughout my teenage years, I caught her texting other men multiple times. There was an incident with my math teacher when I was 16. I borrowed her phone to call Dad because mine was dead, and a message popped up from Mr. Peterson saying how much he missed her perfume. Another time, when Dad was on a business trip, I found her giggling over texts from our married neighbor about meeting up for coffee. I showed Dad the messages back then, but he just looked defeated and said that sometimes adults make mistakes and we needed to keep our family together. After the blow-up about Alan, I went upstairs to my room, only to discover it had been transformed into some kind of home office. The walls were painted a different color, my posters were gone, and there was a desk where my bed used to be. All my stuff had been packed into boxes and moved to the garage. The space that held 22 years of my life had been erased in 6 months. That's when Alan tried to play mediator, saying that change is hard, but that I needed to accept that this was my mom's house now, and that they were trying to build a life together. He had the nerve to suggest that maybe I should consider getting my own place after graduation, instead of moving back home. Something in me snapped. I went to the garage, grabbed whatever boxes of my stuff and Dad's belongings I could fit in my car, and drove straight to my grandparents' house. My grandfather James, 75M, and grandmother Marie, 73F, took me in without hesitation. They weren't even surprised by what happened. Over dinner, they revealed they'd been suspicious of Mom's behavior for years. My grandmother told me about an incident from when I was 14. She'd stopped by our house unexpectedly to drop off some garden tools and caught Mom kissing our gardener in the greenhouse. When they confronted Dad about it, he begged them not to tell me, saying he wanted to protect our family and keep me from getting hurt. Mom has been blowing up my phone since I left, but not with apologies. Instead, she's demanding that I return the boxes of Dad's stuff I took. According to her, as his widow, everything in the house belongs to her now. But these aren't valuable items. They're personal things like his old watch that he wore every day, photo albums of our fishing trips, birthday cards he saved from me, and letters he wrote when I first went to college. They're memories of my dad that mean nothing to her, but everything to me. The final straw came this morning when she sent a message saying that Alan needs the garage space for his workout equipment, so I need to come get my junk, or she'll throw it out. She called me ungrateful and said I was acting like a spoiled child who couldn't handle that mommy found happiness again. I blocked her number after that. My grandparents are helping me figure out my options, but right now I'm just trying to understand how my mom could so quickly discard everything about Dad and replace him like he was nothing more than old furniture. Update 1. Life has a way of delivering karma when you least expect it. Yesterday, my dad's best friend Mark, 54M, visited my grandfather with information that changed everything. Mark and Dad had been friends since college, roommates who stayed close even after graduation. He was Dad's best man at the wedding and my godfather, though he moved to another city for work when I was young. Mark, who works as a real estate lawyer, came with a thick folder of documents and a story that left us all stunned. 3 months before his death, Dad had secretly transferred ownership of our house into my name. The whole process was carefully planned and executed with Mark's help. Dad had been thinking about it for months, especially after his annual physical showed some concerning heart issues. It turns out Dad wasn't as oblivious to Mom's behavior as we thought. During their last lunch together, Dad confided in Mark about finding hotel receipts in Mom's car and seeing suspicious charges on their joint credit card for years. He knew she was probably cheating but stayed for my sake. What really worried him was his family health history. His father died at 49 and his brother at 47, both from heart problems. He was determined not to leave me vulnerable if anything happened to him. Mark brought all the original documents showing the property transfer. Everything was legally recorded and properly filed. Dad had even paid extra to expedite the process, as if he sensed time was running out. The paperwork included a letter from Dad to Mark, asking him to wait until I really needed help before revealing this information. Dad wrote that he hoped this would never be necessary, but he wanted to make sure I would always have a home of my own. When my grandfather called Mom to inform her about the house situation, her reaction was explosive. She started screaming about betrayal and how Dad had no right to do this to her. She ranted about how she gave up her youth for this marriage, she was 26 when they married, and deserved everything. Then she accused my grandfather of making this up to bully her. The most interesting part? Alan moved out within 3 hours of learning the house wasn't actually Mom's. He didn't even say goodbye, just packed his workout equipment and left while Mom was still on the phone arguing with my grandfather. Mark did some digging and discovered that Alan Alan has a history of moving in with recently widowed women, convincing them to sell their homes or take out loans, and then disappearing with the money. He had apparently been pressuring Mom to sell the house to invest in his latest business idea, a cryptocurrency gym or something equally ridiculous. My grandparents' lawyer sent Mom an official notice to vacate the property within 30 days. Her response was unhinged, dozens of hysterical messages about how I was destroying her life, how no daughter should treat her mother this way, and how she would never forgive this betrayal. She even called my university trying to claim I was mentally unstable and needed to be sent home. Thankfully, the school didn't take her seriously. But the worst discovery came when Mark was helping me check Dad's belongings. Mom had already listed several of his valuable possessions on eBay. His collector's edition watches that he planned to give me on my wedding day, his rare vinyl records that we used to listen to together on weekends, and even his grandfather's antique cufflinks. She had marked them all as deceased estate sale, with prices way below their actual value, probably hoping for quick cash before anyone found out. When confronted about selling Dad's things, Mom claimed she needed money because I was selfishly staying at college instead of coming home to help her. She conveniently forgot about the substantial life insurance payout she received after Dad's death. The policy was enough to cover all their debts and still leave her comfortable, but apparently that wasn't enough. I spent today with Mark and my grandparents, going through more of Dad's papers. We found documents showing that Dad had been quietly paying off their mortgage with his bonuses without telling Mom, who kept spending recklessly thinking they still had years of payments left. The house has been fully paid off for 2 years. Every new detail we uncover shows how hard Dad worked to secure my future, while Mom was only thinking about herself. Mom's latest tactic is telling family members that Dad was abusive and controlling with money, which is why she had to look elsewhere for happiness. The few relatives who've heard her story have called my grandparents asking if it's true, but they all know what Mom is really like. No one is buying her victim narrative, especially since she's already moved most of her stuff to Alan's condo, clearly planning to leave even before this came out. Update 2. Getting Mom out of the house turned into a complete nightmare that required police intervention. After ignoring the eviction notice for weeks, she started claiming she had squatters' rights and couldn't legally be removed. She even posted on Facebook about her cruel daughter making her homeless, which led to some distant relatives calling to berate me before they knew the whole story. When the police finally came to enforce the eviction notice, Mom refused to open the door. She blasted music to drown out their knocking and kept screaming that this was her home and she had rights. It took 3 hours and threats of breaking down the door before she finally let them in. That's when we discovered the full extent of what she'd done to Dad's belongings. His prized guitar collection, the one he spent 20 years building, was completely gone. These weren't just regular guitars. They included a 1962 Fender Stratocaster that his father gave him, signed guitars from his favorite musicians, and the acoustic guitar he used to play me to sleep when I was little. She'd sold them all through various online marketplaces, most for far less than they were worth. The vintage camera equipment he used in his photography hobby? Sold. His military service medals from his time in the army? Gone. The limited edition books he collected? All disappeared. She'd been systematically selling everything of value that belonged to Dad, starting just weeks after his funeral. We found receipts showing she'd been meeting buyers in parking lots and shipping items across the country, all while I was away at college thinking she was grieving. During the move-out, I went through the house room by room, documenting everything that was missing. The walls were bare where Dad's family photos used to hang, generations of family history that she'd taken down and either sold or thrown away. His office had been completely emptied except for basic furniture. She'd even sold his desk, the heavy oak one that his grandfather had made by hand. The garage was the worst. Dad's workbench, where he taught me how to build my first birdhouse, was cleared out. All his tools, the ones he'd carefully organized and maintained for years, were gone. The pegboard where he used to hang them still showed outlines of missing tools, like a crime scene. She'd sold his entire workshop piece by piece. Alan showed up during the move-out, claiming he needed to get some things he'd left behind. He tried his nice guy routine again, suggesting that maybe we could all live together as a family. When I refused to even consider it, he revealed some interesting information. Apparently, Mom had told him the house was fully paid off, true, and that she was planning to refinance it to invest in his new business venture. He seemed genuinely surprised to learn that she'd never had the authority to do that. What really got to me was finding Dad's journals hidden in the attic. Mom hadn't discovered them because they were tucked away in an old Christmas decoration box. Dad had been writing about his concerns for years, noting Mom's suspicious behavior, documenting missing money from their accounts, and expressing worry about what would happen to me if anything happened to him. There were entries about catching Mom in lies, finding unexplained hotel charges, and seeing her car parked at places she claimed she'd never been. The most heartbreaking entry was from just a month before he died. He wrote about how he'd seen Mom and Alan together at a restaurant across town, looking very intimate. He knew then that she was already planning her next move, but instead of confronting her, he focused on making sure I would be protected. He spent his last weeks quietly getting his affairs in order, all while carrying that knowledge. My grandparents helped me hire a moving company to pack up everything that was left. While they were working, more neighbors came forward with information. One elderly neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, told me she'd seen Mom meeting different men in the driveway late at night while Dad was traveling for work, but she'd been too uncomfortable to say anything while Dad was alive. Another neighbor mentioned seeing Mom and Alan together at local restaurants months before Dad died. The final insult came when we checked the home security cameras Dad had installed last year. Mom had deleted most of the footage, but she missed the backup drive hidden in Dad's workshop. The videos showed her bringing multiple people to look at Dad's belongings, haggling over prices in our driveway, and carrying out boxes of his things late at night while Alan helped. She had been methodically erasing Dad from the house, probably planning to tell me everything was stolen if I ever asked about it. My uncle, Dad's brother, drove down to help us change all the locks and install a new security system. While he was here, he told me that Dad had confided in him about Mom's behavior years ago. Dad had stayed in the marriage partly because Mom had threatened to make getting custody of me difficult and expensive if he tried to divorce her. He chose to endure her infidelity and lying to keep me from being caught in a nasty custody battle. Update 3. Mom's latest attempt to manipulate the situation would be laughable if it wasn't so infuriating. Yesterday morning, she showed up at the house unannounced, wearing the same clothes she wore to Dad's funeral and looking deliberately disheveled. She started crying on the front porch, loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. about how she's under severe mental stress and needs to stay in the guest room until she figures things out. The performance was Oscar-worthy, complete with mascara tears and shaking hands. She went on about how she's having panic attacks, never had them before, and can't sleep in Alan's apartment because it doesn't feel like home. When I stood firm and mentioned getting a restraining order, her entire demeanor changed in seconds. The tears dried up instantly, and she started telling me how ungrateful I was for the sacrifices she made raising me. What makes this especially rich is that I found out from Alan's ex-wife that Mom has already put down a deposit on a luxury condo across town. She's not homeless or struggling, she's just trying to maintain access to the house, probably to keep taking things when no one's watching. The ex-wife, Karen, reached out after seeing Mom's social media posts about being cruelly evicted. She warned me that this was exactly how Mom got involved with Alan in the first place, playing the victim until people gave her what she wanted. Speaking of Alan, he finally showed his true colors when he broke up with Mom yesterday. Apparently, she hadn't just lied about owning the house. She'd also told him she had a substantial inheritance coming from her parents. Well, my maternal grandparents are still very much alive and living in a modest retirement community in Florida. They haven't spoken to Mom in years because she borrowed money from them and never paid it back. Alan was counting on this non-existent inheritance to fund his latest business scheme. The breakup happened in the parking lot of a local restaurant. One of my cousins was there and recorded the whole thing on her phone. Alan was screaming about Mom making him look like an idiot and ruining his reputation in town. Mom was throwing her drink at him and calling him a gold digger. The irony of that accusation wasn't lost on anyone. The video has been making rounds in the family group chat, and honestly, it's exactly what they both deserve. Now Mom's latest demand is even more delusional. She's claiming she has maternal privileges that give her the right to visit the house whenever she wants. She even had a friend who's a paralegal draft up a ridiculous document about her visitation rights to the property. When my grandparents' lawyer pointed out that no such rights exist, she started calling my dad's relatives, claiming I was holding his belongings hostage from her. The most disturbing part is discovering that Mom has been driving by the house multiple times a day. The security cameras catch her car slowing down or parking across the street. Sometimes she just sits there for hours, watching the house. My neighbors have started documenting these drive-bys because they're concerned about her mental state. One of them even offered to let me park my car in their garage so Mom can't tell when I'm home. Yesterday, she sent a group email to my entire extended family, claiming that the stress of my abuse has given her health problems, and that she needs everyone's help to convince me to do the right thing. She included photos of herself looking sad in a hospital waiting room, but my cousin who works at that hospital confirmed she was just there for a routine checkup. The email backfired when several relatives replied by sharing screenshots of her eBay listings for Dad's belongings. Update 4. After exhausting all her options and alienating pretty much everyone in town, Mom finally left for another state. None of our relatives would take her in, not after seeing the video of her fight with Alan and learning how she'd sold Dad's belongings. Her sister Kathy, who hasn't spoken to her in 8 years after Mom borrowed and never repaid $20,000, surprisingly agreed to let her stay temporarily in her guest house in Arizona. Before leaving, Mom made one last attempt to claim things from the house. She showed up with a U-Haul truck and 2 guys she'd hired, claiming she needed to get her valuable antiques. Fortunately, I had documented everything in the house with photos and serial numbers. The police came and explained that she couldn't take anything without proving ownership. She left screaming about how she'd raised an ungrateful demon who'd rot in hell. The last message I got from her was a 5-page email about how I'll regret treating her this way when I'm older and have children of my own. She wrote that one day I'll understand a mother's need for happiness, and that keeping her from Dad's belongings is a sin she'll never forgive. She even claims that Dad would be ashamed of how I turned out. That was rich, considering what I found next. While cleaning out Dad's old home office, I discovered a hidden panel behind his desk. Inside was a letter dated just 2 weeks before his death, along with a small box containing old photos and documents. The letter explained everything: why he stayed in the marriage, why he transferred the house to me, and what he hoped for my future. Dad wrote that he'd known about Mom's affairs for years, but stayed because she threatened to fight for full custody if he divorced her. He was worried about what kind of life I'd have splitting time between them, especially given her manipulative nature. He'd witnessed how she treated her previous stepchildren, something I never knew about. Apparently, she'd been married briefly before meeting Dad, and couldn't bear the thought of me going through that. The photos in the box showed a younger, happier version of my parents. Dad included notes explaining how things changed after Mom started working at her last job, how money started disappearing from their accounts, and how he caught her lying about where she'd been. He documented everything, knowing someday I might need to understand why he made the choices he did. I've spent the past month renovating the house, erasing every change Mom made. Gone are the gray walls she painted over Dad's favorite blue. Gone is the modern furniture she bought to replace his comfortable old pieces. I found some of Dad's original furniture in consignment shops around town and bought it back. His old leather recliner, the one Mom claimed was lost in moving, was sitting in a secondhand store just 20 minutes away. I'm finishing my degree online now so I can live here permanently. That's what Dad wanted, for me to have a place where I'd be safe and free from Mom's manipulations. I've turned his old office back into the cozy room it used to be, with his books, the ones I could find and rebuy, lining the shelves, and his record player, rescued from a pawn shop, in the corner. Mom still sends emails sometimes, but they go straight to a special folder I never open. I heard from Aunt Kathy that she's already causing drama in Arizona, but that's no longer my problem. I'm focused on honoring Dad's memory and building the life he worked so hard to secure for me.